Can Halloween Ends prove that a major horror film can go back to its roots and be a slow, tension filled horror masterpiece? Let's find out.
Lock your doors, bolt your windows, and turn off the lights. Make sure the kids are safe at home, cause you're headed to the Night Watch Zone.
Hey guys, today I want to pose a question, and this actually will go into many directions. I'm hoping for a discussion in the comments and possibly in future live streams. Halloween Ends is going to be an interesting movie because supposedly it is going to be more intimate, more contained, according to David Gordon Green, that is. But we do have a lot of folks, especially Halloween fans, that either don't believe that or are thinking that the franchise will continue to do things that are so bombastic and quote unquote off the rails. Myself personally, I'm going to go by what he said. I'm going to assume that this new movie will be more contained, it'll be more intimate, in line more so with the 78 classic, which would make sense because David Gordon Green is a huge fan of the classic and has shown that he wants to pay respect to John Carpenter and Carpenter's original vision. So the question is, will they go that route? But I think a bigger question about this is horror movies in general today are a lot more bombastic. They're a lot more grand and so forth compared to those movies from back in the day. You know, if you look at the original Halloween versus, the sequels and even this new trilogy, there's a huge difference in how things are portrayed. Halloween 78 is much more slow and methodical, and the movies have, obviously gotten bigger and bigger, and not always for the better. And that's true of so many other horror movies. I mean, you look at movies like Alien from 1979, you look at the original Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, even with Friday the 13th, you look at Candyman, you look at Child's Play. So many movies start off with that slow, methodical, tension-filled pace, and then eventually just go off into so many, more grand directions. And a lot of times, it may not be for the better of the story. So I'm just curious, have we gotten to the point now where we can't get back to a more slow and methodical pace? It seems like a lot of folks, and maybe that's just a generational thing, but it seems like a lot of folks want everything right now. They want it all right there. They want a thousand kills in a movie. They want tons and tons of blood, and they want it every couple of minutes. And there are movies that are great for that. They're designed for that. You think of movies like The Evil Dead. Tons and tons of blood, tons and tons of gore. But even the original Evil Dead had more of a slow, methodical pace to it. But I guess where I'm getting at is that I'm wondering if Halloween Ends can be a movie, a modern horror movie that, and it's also a major horror movie that can get back to its roots without any shame.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
And get back to its roots as far as being slow and methodical, Michael being a stalker, lurking around the corners. You know what's going to happen to the victims before they know. And it's not so much that Michael just pops up from anywhere all the time and then just starts killing a lot of people. We got a lot of kills in Halloween Kills. So it would make sense to me that David Gordon Green would pull back in this movie and now kind of get more narrow with the story. I think that would actually round out the trilogy very well. So that's what I'm hoping for, and that's what I think is going to happen. But for you guys that are watching right now, let me know if you think that's going to happen. I know there are a lot of fans that are very frustrated with this new trilogy, these first two movies anyways, because those are the only ones out. And I get that. Me personally, I've enjoyed them for what they were. They're not perfect. There are a lot of issues, but I definitely enjoy these movies a lot more than several of the sequels in this particular franchise, and I'll go round and round with anybody on that. And by the way, if you are not a fan of these movies and you think that these are at the bottom of the list when you rank the Halloween franchise, please check out my reviews on all of the Halloween movies prior to this new iteration by David Gordon Green, because I've had deep dive discussions on each movie. But again, I think there is a movement in horror, and it's been happening the last several years, where you have movies that are more slow, more intimate, more contained, not a bunch of over the top kills, maybe even not over the top gore. You look at movies like The Witch, you look at Hereditary. Hereditary took its time to kind of envelop you into the horror. So there are movies like that out there, and I think they're starting to get, they're starting to catch up a little bit as far as gaining ground in the mindset of the average viewer. Us horror fans, us horror geeks, we're watching everything all the time, anytime. So in a way, we don't really count. But for the average viewer who may not be a huge horror fan, what are they seeing? What are they seeing as far as this trend of how horror is portrayed? Personally speaking, that's another reason why I enjoy, movies, like James Wan. He's done some great movies. I really enjoyed Malignant. I know a lot of people had issue with that, but I had a good time with it. And that movie, although it does have gory scenes in it, it does take its time. It's kind of out there and bonkers crazy, but it does take its time. So did things like The Conjuring and so forth. So I'm just curious as far as where we're going to go in horror movies, with this divide between, trying to appease a new generation of fans that in general, they might have, whether you want to call it a shorter attention span, or maybe they're just used to things being so much more grand than they were, let's say, in the 80s or the 90s. You take a franchise like Scream, that franchise, it tells its story, it takes its time, it does have kills, and it does have moments of gore, but it's not over the top by any means, but it tells its story. It takes its time to get you invested in the characters. Personally speaking, I really like that. I like to actually care about the characters that are getting killed. Don't get me wrong, a good slasher where you have a lot of victims and they're just getting aced out, that's perfectly fine. There's a time and a place for that. But I think it would be really cool if in general movies started to swing, a little bit more to the middle. I'm not saying they have to go back to how things were, in the 80s or the 90s, the early 90s, that is. But I definitely think, we're at a point in horror where we've seen so much. We've seen almost everything. And I think for creative artists and directors and so forth, I think it would be awesome to start to go back that other way and see what we can do, introducing new characters, new heroines, new leading actors, and also new horror icons. We need some new horror icons. We need some creative stuff to happen. So anyways, that's just some of the things that kind of go on in my mind when we talk about horror, the state of horror today, guys. But anyways, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Do you think that horror will keep going in this direction where everything is more and more and more, everything is now, I want it now, I want to know it now, and there's not as much character development? Or do you think there's a possibility that we could go back to some of the slower attention-filled movies? Do you think Halloween Ends will do that? Again, this is a major horror film, so it would be really cool if they deliver on that promise of this being more intimate, more controlled, and a lot more in line with Halloween 78. So let me know in the comment section down below. Please give the video a like. That would help support the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. And if you are not subscribed to the Nightwatch Zone, what are you doing? This is the time to do it, and we're having a lot of fun discussions, and I hope that this can be one where we discuss the back and forth on this question, because I think it's really, really interesting. So anyways, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Nightwatch. Peace out.